We would like to thank Sound Mind for supporting tonight's meeting. Any individual company or product, but I would like to introduce Aram Aziz, who will be giving us a brief presentation about SoundMind. I'll give a brief introduction. SoundMind enables families and caregivers to securely leverage voice assistants like Alexa through their secure online like have instant access to video calling, services, engaging content, and devices are pre-configured, shipped, and ready to plug and play. And so without further ado, let me thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Yes, I'm so happy to be a sponsor and would just love to do just a quick intro before we get into the education webinar. So what I have here, I'll share my screen really quick, give you an overview of what SoundMind is and how it can help you deliver care for those that you care for. And I have a quick 1-minute video that will just make this a lot more clear. So I'm going to screen share here. Okay. Actually, let me just do this first and then screen share. Share computer sound. Okay, great. All right. Okay, so just really quick, you know, if you've used Alexa before, you know that it can be very useful just to get information simply by speaking. But we have seen that this is helpful for older adults, those with mild cognitive impairment, and then of course those that are providing care. It's a great assistant. So I'm just going to share this one quick video that we've made, and I'll give you a great overview. Let me know if you can hear it.
SoundMind is the easiest way to connect with their loved ones and make sure they're okay. First, devices are pre-configured. So all you have to do is plug and play and you get instant video calling right out of the box. There's no apps, no logins, just simply speak and you can make a video call. It doesn't get any easier than that. Only with SoundMind are photos shared via text message, so you can share moments that matter. Reminders are sent remotely.
I'm reminding you, take medication.
No more missed appointments or medications. Simply by speaking, access engaging content to elevate mood, like music and games. You can also stay informed by asking for news and podcasts. Alarms, timers, and sleep sounds help with daily routines. You can also experience a trip down memory lane. SoundMind provides curated content throughout the year to improve quality of life. If you can't be there, send them a virtual care assistant and get peace of mind with SoundMind. For more information,
I'm here, so you don't need that part of it. But I hope that gave you an overview of what SoundMind is. To make it a little bit more clear on how it's different than Alexa, you'll see on the left, there's a portal that caregivers and families can access to securely manage each device. And essentially it is a voice activated care assistant. So it's very, very useful. And I'll just quickly just share. Oh, I hear a little kitty. So hello, kitty. Someone has a cat. So the benefits of voice assistants is that it's much easier to use than a touch screen. It's hands-free. You have access to the web by speaking. It's all connected to the cloud. Another thing is that it's very transparent, meaning that if you are using technology, you know, sometimes you're behind the screen or behind a tablet or a smartphone. This is a technology you can use with the person you're providing care for. And of course, there's a personality that aids in companionship. And then the final piece here is that speaking has its own cognitive benefits as well. Okay, and I'll just keep it very brief so you guys can get into it. But you can do a lot throughout the day with using voice assistants, from asking questions to receiving reminders. It's something that's there all the time. And we are in memory care facilities. You can find us at 80th Street Residence. And they were recognized and awarded for using SoundMind by McKnight's as a resident engagement tool there. And we recently received recognition for being a technology to mitigate social isolation. And 255 companies applied. So, we're not just a small company trying to get started. We have been around for quite some time. And then we, just for everyone at CaringKind, we provide all the setup and support, and we're providing 1 month free. That includes the device. So it's really just, $0 to get started, just to try it out. If it works for you, we're very happy. If it doesn't, you can just return it. Everyone is different. And that's it. And so I will share this information with CaringKind. They will share this with you. And if you're interested in learning more, please reach out to us. We have parents and grandparents that have dementia, and we know the challenges, but having a technology can really help with the guilt, with the anger, the things that you're going to learn about today. So thank you very much.
I'm trying to unmute. Thank you, Erin. This is really some presentation. Now for the rest of the show, I'm going to share my screen. Let me just make sure I'm doing this right. Okay. Here we go. So coping with caregiving and difficult emotions. So our agenda for tonight, first we want to get an understanding about anger. And I'm going to look at a lot of, I think anger is kind of like this all-encompassing, talk a bit more about how it's, but we're going to kind of come with anger, particularly in a caregiving context. So have a look at guilt, a look at ambivalence, which might be a new concept to some of you. It is a very, it's a form of grief that in many situations, one of which is cases of people caring for loved ones with dementia. I'm going to talk about self-compassion. I'm going to look at mindfulness. We're going to summarize what you can do, both to deal with your own anger. I will discuss CaringKind services, which is also part of caregiver self-care. Okay. I'm also going to have a little bit of I think it's a treat at the end. Valuable and useful. So without further ado, that something's not working. I think, certainly in society, nobody is encouraged not be angry, to kind of swallow it. And the thing is, anger is really a neutral thing. It's basically something in your body that is not working. That being said, it's obviously not important to listen to it, because your body is giving you, and your whole system is giving you information. This means that other emotions underlie the feelings of anger. So it could be fear, grief, things like that. Nobody can hear me? Is that a problem?
Hi, my name is Marilyn. It's cut
in the chat.
know for other people, but I'm having trouble hearing you. It's cutting in and out. So
It's cutting off. It's going in and out. Okay, let me see what
I'm having trouble
I
also.
don't know
You
what I
keep
can
on
do
cutting
here.
out.
I'm cutting out. Back. I'm sorry about this. Okay. Okay. Let me see. Am I still cutting in and out? I may have to leave and then come back in. Is anybody else having trouble hearing me?
You sound better now.
Right now you're okay, Adina.
Right now I'm okay. Okay, good. I got everybody in my house off the internet. So hopefully that's good. If not, feel free to cut me off. You can't hear. I may have to go. I may have to leave and come back, but I hope not. Okay.
Adina, I think that it's your microphone. It sounds really, really buzzy. And I think
okay.
that.
Let me take it off and see if it works.
Feedback.
Do you hear me better now?
No, maybe it's the microphone in your computer. Yeah, because it sounds like buzzy, and I don't think it's the Wi-Fi.
Okay.
It is a little better without the mic, I think.
Okay. So I'll try without. I don't know if I can do anything else about the mic, unfortunately. Okay. Should we, okay, should we, let's go on. If anybody, I guess, again, if there are any additional problems, let me know. I know this is being recorded, so we can send the recording. And we will also send the PowerPoint so that everybody can see it. And
I have one more suggestion, and it may not be anything to do with the mic. It might be that the volume is too high.
Oh, the volume on my
input on your microphone that's taking it in. It just sounds sort of buzzy at the top.
Okay. Let me see if I can figure this out. I don't know if I can.
Well, you're good enough. You're good. I mean, good enough for me anyway.
Okay.
You sound good enough to me too.
Yeah.
Is it okay if I continue and
yeah.
if not, I profusely apologize for my awful technical difficulties. Okay. So I guess I'll start from the beginning. So as I mentioned, anger is a signal that something's not working. So while you don't necessarily want to act it out, you don't want to ignore it either. It's a secondary emotion, which means other emotions underlie those feelings of anger. And this can be, the underlying feelings can be from feeling powerlessness, fear and grief. There can be others. These tend to be the most common. And we can kind of understand why. I'll tell you, when I first got the idea to make this presentation, it happened to be that this is a common experience with caregivers, but particularly once COVID hit, I was getting a lot of calls from people who were saying, I'm finding that I'm just so angry and so much more angry because I'm with the person so often, and help me with my anger. And so I think to some degree, I want to validate that, yeah, there's a lot of things that can trigger anger when you're caring for somebody who has dementia. You have, these are just some common ones that I hear about all the time. You have annoying behaviors, repetitive questions. oftentimes, like I find as a professional, you know, it's kind of easy to deal with somebody with repetitive questions for a while because, you know, if you don't live with them, you know you're leaving. But if you're with somebody day in, day out and you have to keep answering the same thing and the same thing and the same thing, yeah, that gets annoying, and it can certainly trigger a lot of anger, it can trigger a lot of different feelings underneath that anger, but it's just on the surface, it's very annoying. Also, people with dementia might be, a person with dementia might use poor judgment, and that can have a negative impact either on himself or on the caregiver or both. And that certainly will be very anger provoking. A caregiver and the person with dementia also have to deal with the medical and long-term care system, which can be confusing, and it can also leave them feeling powerless. Particularly now, I'm hearing a lot about people, especially, but both when it comes to people who have people in nursing homes, and also when it comes to dealing with home care. There are a lot of things that are really out of our control and not helpful, and it can make you very angry. Family conflict is another one, you know, where there might be people in the family who don't see eye to eye, who may not be helping, who may be critical. That will exacerbate feelings of anger. And then you also have feelings of grief and loss, that this person is not the same person who, you know, they were, you know, even a few years ago. And so that can make somebody very angry as well. I think, just like I mentioned, it's important to acknowledge anger as a signal and something to not push away, but to really pay attention to. I think it's also good to try to figure out what your anger style is, because there are different ways people might show anger or might feel anger. So, and also, just because there are 4 different styles doesn't mean that you don't use different ones at different times. But these are the basic different styles. You have the reactive anger, where that would be somebody who just has a short fuse, like anything can set you off. You know, and really, you know, you can't really just calm down, like everything is like a 10. Volcanic anger is where, you know, you can kind of keep things together for a while, but then that one thing happens and it's the straw that broke the camel's back, and then it's just a big blow up, which may seem out of proportion to the incident that, you know, preceded the blow up, but it actually may be a whole lot of things that you've been kind of keeping inside, and then just something happens and you just can't hold it in anymore. Passive aggressive anger is where you don't show outward anger, but you might be showing your aggression more passively. So, you know, giving somebody the silent treatment. It's just as aggressive, it's just that you're not yelling. Or, you know, deliberately not carrying out a task that you were supposed to do for the person you're angry with, you know, sabotaging things, where you're not directly showing your anger, but you're doing it in a more passive or underhanded way. And then there's projecting anger, and that's where you're not getting angry directly at the person who is provoking it, because maybe they're not safe, but you'll opt to blow up at something that's safer. So I saw this cute example of it where, you know, like, let's say you had a really bad day at work and your boss yelled at you, and, you know, you had all these difficulties, and you come home and you start, you know, screaming at your cat. You know, the cat's much safer than screaming at your boss. So, you know, we probably all use a combination of these things, but it's important to be mindful of them and to see, like, you know, how do I show my anger? And then the other piece of anger is guilt. Guilt and anger go hand in hand. Getting angry at a person with dementia can trigger feelings of guilt, and those same feelings of guilt can then trigger feelings of anger. So, and I've had people tell me this all the time, like they'll be angry about something that the person with dementia did, and then they'll feel guilty about the fact that they're angry because, you know, the person can't help it. They have dementia. But then they'll feel guilty about the fact that they'll feel angry about the fact that they feel guilty. Like, well, why should I feel guilty over this? It's not my, you know, it's not my fault. I didn't do this. And it becomes this whole cycle that kind of eats you up. Other parts of anger that I think are important to look at, ambivalence. So ambivalence is like feeling two different things, two conflicting emotions simultaneously, which is also very common when you're caregiving. With dementia, it's not unusual. And I can hear this. I hear this a lot from people who truly love the person who they're taking care of, but they also want them to die because they're, I mean, it's a very difficult, it's certainly very difficult to watch them suffer. And they don't want that. But at the same time, they want them to live. It's a very hard thing to carry both at the same time. And feeling torn by ambivalence also can contribute to intense anxiety. And I do really feel, if there's anything you take out of this presentation, that these feelings are very normal when it comes to dementia, when it comes to really any illness, but certainly when it comes to dementia. And it is important to acknowledge it. It does help caregivers move forward in their emotional processes and not act them out, not act out anger, not do things that might not be in the best interest of either the caregiver or the care receiver. So I really do feel that it's a really important thing to know that it is a very normal experience, and it should not be, I mean, it probably fuels the feelings of guilt, but it is very normal and there's nothing to feel guilty about. So then there are a few things I think of when I think about coping with ambivalence. So one thing I think is important to acknowledge is that emotions do change. Just because you're feeling one way one day doesn't mean you're going to feel it the next day. You can have some days where, you're feeling like, yeah, I'm on it and I got it. And it's a good caregiving day. And at some point you may feel like, even as great as it is, maybe I don't really want to be caregiving. And that's okay. The opposite, you can have a really awful day and feel like, it's been the worst time ever. And then later on, you might think, but what I'm doing is worthwhile. And you might actually feel, somewhat good about what you're doing. So the other thing I think that really is important to think about when it comes with ambivalence is the relationship to the person you're caring for, and anger too, by the way. I think we tend to think of things in boxes. You think about dementia and you're thinking just about the dementia. You're not certainly in literature or in anything that you're reading or in TV or movies or whatever. You're kind of just thinking about the dementia box, but you're not really thinking about who this person was. And this person is not just a person with dementia. They're a person who has a history with you. And that history is going to play out in how you feel about caring for that person. And, unfortunately, not everybody who's a caregiver has had a positive history with somebody with dementia. There are people who unfortunately are in bad marriages who end up with spouses. Those same bad spouses end up having dementia. You have children, adult children who are taking care of parents who might have been critical or abusive in childhood. And that is all going to come into play with the feelings that come up with caregiving. So, and they will certainly affect ambivalence. It certainly makes sense that if you're caring for somebody who was not there for you, it's not necessarily going to feel great. That being said, there might be some people who do find some reward out of it. A lot of these things are very individual. But regardless, I think if there's anything you get out of this presentation, is that all of these feelings are normal. And again, acknowledging them to yourself is an important step in maintaining your wellness as a caregiver. So when we talk about ambivalence, I think it is also important to discuss something called ambiguous loss, which is I mean, we all know about, grief and bereavement, and, you have the 5 stages of grief. It's different. When there is a complete loss of somebody, there is no ambiguity that the person is gone. With ambiguous loss, there's an ambiguity there. It's like the person might be there or not there. Ambiguous loss was actually it's a term coined by Pauline Boss, who I believe is a psychologist. And she was actually doing work with families with missing soldiers and how they were coping with the loss of not having the person, but holding on to the idea that they might still be alive. And then she found that these same psychological processes were happening to children whose maybe their fathers were like never home. And also she found that it was happening in people who were caring for relatives with dementia. So, and she actually has, she first wrote a book, Ambiguous Loss. She has since written a bunch of different books. One of them happens to be just about dementia caregiving. So it's really a very prominent issue when it comes to dementia, because even the person with dementia, they might be physically there, but particularly as their capacity changes and wanes, the person who you recognized as that person is no longer there anymore. And that can be really a difficult thing to deal with emotionally. So the way she sort of handles dealing with ambiguous loss is sort of identifying the need. She identifies the need to understand that the ambiguity is a challenge. You kind of have to work with it instead of trying to fight against it. You really want to try to live with the ambiguity, and living with the ambiguity is by sort of using the both and way of thinking. So the person is both gone and still here. And then it goes to everything. I think a lot of times caregivers feel that they have to be completely present for the person who they're caring for. And it's hard to sometimes step away or step back, even if it means leaving somebody with an aide. It can still be difficult, but even just having the thought of taking care of yourself as the person is so ill. But the task of dealing with ambiguous loss is being able to say to yourself or think to yourself that I can take care of both the person with dementia and myself. I can be both a caregiver and a person with my own needs. And you're kind of always going in and out of this caregiving experience, at least mentally. It's not easy, but that's kind of the work that's involved with ambiguous loss and with dementia caregiving. And I think this is a great segue into our discussion about what is self-care. I think it's interesting. I can talk as a professional. It sometimes is hard for me to tell caregivers, yeah, take some time for your own self-care. You should go for that manicure and all this stuff, and you should. That doesn't mean you shouldn't. But to some degree, I feel like we're still telling people like you have to do things that can still seem like another thing to put on your checklist. And at least in terms of the most up-to-date thinking about self-care is not necessarily about, engaging in something you have to pay money for, or, even in something particularly, extravagant or indulgent. But it's really about focusing on what you need and how you can care for yourself in the best way. And sometimes it's not that glamorous. There are 8 components of self-care. One of them is physical. So one of them might be physical exercise. That's not necessarily fun for everybody, but it is very important for the body and important for health. So that's a component towards self-care. There are other physical things that can be more, indulgent and relaxing, but I'm just saying the framework of self-care is not just about enjoyment. It's also about making sure that you are caring for yourself, because that is easy to neglect. You want to make sure that you're eating nourishing meals. It's another piece that actually can probably fall into a bunch of different things, because there are more sensual components to it also, and probably some emotional components might be there. Getting enough sleep is another important component of physical self-care, which I know can be very difficult for people with, who are caring for people with dementia. And I'm sure, I mean, even just knowing with myself on days that I don't get enough sleep, yeah, you get more angry. So, you know, and I know that it's not always so easy to just get those hours of sleep, and some people can't, but trying to, and this is, I guess, where my last slide of what, you know, CaringKind does is helpful. We can try to strategize ways of figuring out how to get you in a position where you can get more sleep. Now, emotional self-care. So just the act of setting boundaries and saying no when you need to is an act of self-care. Making time for reflecting on feelings. I'm going to talk about later about self-compassion, trying to not beat yourself up. In fact, if you think about it, you know, a lot of times the running commentary that we have in our heads when we talk to ourselves, we wouldn't say half the things we say to ourselves to other people, even people we don't care about or we don't even like. When you think about the kind of abusive way we sometimes talk to ourselves, maybe trying to make a practice to stop that and to give yourself some kindness and compassion is an important step towards self-care. And as I mentioned with saying no, being aware in general of what your boundaries are. You know, maybe not everything with caregiving should fall on you. Maybe asking for help, maybe getting an aid, maybe, you know, enlisting other people in a person's care might be something to look into to help yourself. It doesn't only have to be on you. If somebody can mute themselves, I hear some feedback. With psychological self-care, so some examples, and I'm also going to be talking a little bit more later about mindfulness, maybe learning something new, reading a book. I like this one, doing a digital detox might be another way of caring for yourself psychologically, particularly now. There's so much, or not turning on the news every hour, maybe only getting like 15 minutes of it to try to keep yourself centered and calm is another way to care for yourself. Then there's spiritual self-care. So obviously engaging in religious and spiritual practices, being more mindful of or practicing mindfulness, meditating, reflecting in a journal, walking in nature. Those all can be aspects of spiritual self-care. Social self-care, calling a friend, you know, asking for help when you need it. Financial self-care. We don't think of financial self-care so much, but it is also a part of self-care and how we can care for ourselves. Know where income is coming in, know how much is coming out, you know, paying bills on time, spending and saving money wisely. Those are also ways that we can care for, that we show that we care for ourselves. Environmental, you know, I never really thought that like the act of cleaning my house is a form of self-care, but it is. You're showing that this is my space, and I deserve to have a decent looking space. And then there's also professional self-care, which is, you know, making sure that, you know, I mean, for certainly for those who are in the working world, to make sure that you are negotiating your needs, you're using professional development opportunities, having clear professional boundaries, not taking everything on, making sure that you're getting paid what you're worth. You know, even taking a lunch break is a form of self-care. So these are all aspects of self-care. And, you know, as I mentioned, when we think of self-care, we can think of things that we're doing that maybe aren't so glamorous that are for our care, and also things that are more relaxing and fun for our self-care as well. So as I mentioned with self-compassion, which is a really, it's a semi-new concept. I think self-esteem was kind of all the rage for a while, and now we're talking about self-compassion. It was, I guess, developed, or this concept was developed in a psychological sense by a psychologist named Kristin Neff. And what self-compassion is, it's the act of being kind to oneself. So as I mentioned, you're treating yourself and speaking to yourself the way you would treat a friend. And it's based on these 3 core points: self-kindness, being kind to yourself, having a compassionate inner voice to yourself, not yelling at yourself, common humanity, which is sort of like having the recognition that what's happening to you is not unique to yourself. It's something that happens as a result of being human, as a result of being in this world, which sort of helps you take a step back from, I don't want to say taking things so personally, but it certainly does not feel like it's a direct affront to yourself, because these things happen. And it's not, you didn't cause it. And, you can only do as much as you can do as a human being to rectify it. And then there's mindfulness, which is sort of the act of slowing down and really focusing on what you're doing in the present moment. I think a lot of times we're always rushing, we're always thinking, we're thinking about the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. A lot of times just slowing down can really change even just the way we physically feel, and it can calm us down. So those are all important aspects, and all important aspects to develop this idea of self-compassion. So mindfulness, as I mentioned, involves slowing down and being conscious of the moment at hand. And, I've heard some interesting ways that caregivers have been trying to integrate mindfulness into their caregiving. Because, there's the classic way where, you sit in a chair or on the floor or wherever you find yourself comfortable, and, you're sitting up straight and you're focusing on your breath, and all you're doing is focusing on your breath. Now, thoughts may come and go, but the idea is you're still always going back to the breath. And you can do this for 2 minutes, you can do this for 10 minutes, and people do it for as long as 30 minutes. It's shown to have a lot of health benefits to it, both psychological and physical, but it's time consuming. And it doesn't necessarily work for everybody, but there are a lot of different ways that we can cultivate mindfulness. So some caregivers, I actually heard this story from a caregiver who, her way of dealing with mindfulness was just to focus on the activity they were assisting with. So let's say it's just like, changing a spouse after an accident. Instead of dealing with the difficult feelings and thoughts that come up after seeing that this person has had a bathroom accident, just focusing on what we need to do. Okay, now we're going to take the sponge and we're going to clean the floor, and we're going to, put one foot put one foot of the person in the shower, the other foot of the person in the shower. We're going to turn the shower on, and just focusing on the minute details of what she had to do to get everything clean. And she found that it actually helped her in diffusing her distress from the situation. I think some of it is just the act of slowing down, and others is the just being able to detach from, the negative experience and the negative attribution of the implications of what it means to have an accident. Okay. Another thing I want to talk about is acceptance. Often when we are angry, we're consumed with thoughts about things that are beyond our control. What we want to try to do is take a step back and focus on what we can control. I have here a picture of Chinese finger traps. So there's actually, hold on a minute. I see somebody has, PWD means person with dementia. When we have, I don't know if everybody's familiar with a Chinese finger trap, but what basically happens is if you put your 2 fingers into the trap, you're stuck, and the more you pull out, the more you're stuck. What you have to do to get out of the finger trap is to actually go into the trap to loosen it so that your fingers can go out. And it's kind of very similar when it comes to acceptance. of difficult emotions, of difficult experiences. And as I've been mentioning, even just with the feelings of anger, the difficulty accepting our negative feelings can make them a lot harder to deal with, ironically, right? We're going to keep pulling and pulling and pulling on that finger trap, and we're not going to get out. We're just going to be stuck in it. And a lot of times by working on just accepting it, we can actually free ourselves, or maybe not completely free ourselves, but it can release some of that tension. Oh, okay. Okay. So here are some things that you can do. Certainly in the moment of anger, I definitely tell people, take a break, count to 10. If you have to, go to another room, do something to step back from the situation, particularly if you're afraid that you're really going to lose control. But I think in general, just the act of physically stepping back is helpful. The other thing is to focus on the things that you can control. There are a lot of things to be angry about that you can't control. And again, you're kind of still stuck in the finger trap that way. If you can focus on the things you can control, then there are things that can move and that can be worked with. As I mentioned, practicing self-care, you do want to make sure that you are in the best shape you are in. Firstly, you're not really going to be very helpful to anybody if you can't care for you. If you're not caring for yourself, if you're sick, you're not going to be helpful to anybody else, especially the person with dementia. But in general, you also, I certainly find this for myself. I don't know if I necessarily need to have a research study showing this, but if you feel, the better you feel, the easier it will be to kind of weather the difficult situations and the small stuff. And maybe if there is anger, it may not feel as intense as it was when when you're in a non-cared for state. Again, back to accepting all feelings, and also realize that a lot of your feelings are normal. That's really one reason why at CaringKind and really in almost any caregiving program, we really do recommend support groups, because so many people feel that they're all alone and that, people aren't going through the same things. Even if they have dementia, somehow they have it all together. And what's really, I think, transformative about support groups is that you're with people who are going through the same things. They may be in completely different life circumstances, but everybody is dealing with somebody with dementia, and they all, their emotional experiences are really often quite similar. And just having that normalized, I think, is very powerful. Forgive yourself. So another aspect of self-compassion, which is probably fits into one of those categories, but even if not, is forgiving yourself. You are only human, and there are only so many things that you can do. And even as humans, even if you've fallen short, humans fall short. We can't, be on top of our game all the time. So that's also really important. You want to try to cultivate patience. And actually, I think if you can cultivate patience with yourself, it will be easier to cultivate patience with the person with dementia. As I mentioned, no resistance to feeling uncomfortable feelings creates more pain. Find opportunities for pleasure and joy, this should say, in your life. There are small moments that might be pleasurable, and maybe using those mindfulness techniques or trying to be mindful of those small moments can sort of be little anchors through the difficult moments. I once saw this really great self-care packet, and it had 5 things you can do in 2 minutes, and it included mindfully eating a little piece of chocolate. It included blowing bubbles. It included a cup of tea, and there were 2 other things that I can't remember. But just savoring little moments, I think, is really important. One thing I was telling people, especially when COVID was really bad in March, and there was no home care available, you know, even just taking 2 minutes to just be by yourself, you know, in 2 minutes, I guess there are things that could happen, but the likelihood is less than if you were out for a really long time. Just take 2 minutes to just, you know, be away from the person you're caring for and just have that time for yourself. And if you can do more, that's great. But I do think just trying to savor little moments can be the fuel that can get you through the other, you know, more difficult moments. And as this wonderful quote says on the bottom, you really want to try to live in two realities. That's really what we're charged with as caregivers. You know, I can let go and love at the same time. Okay. With that, I do want to go through some of the things, all of the things actually, that CaringKind does, because CaringKind is here to help. We are here for your emotional self-care and your social self-care. We have a helpline. Feel free to call. We're really here to help connect with different services that are available for people with dementia. The helpline is where you kind of call to register for any of our classes. We have ongoing understanding dementia workshops every month. We have family caregiver workshops, which help family members understand the difficult behaviors that come with dementia. We have support groups. We have social work services where if you need to talk to a social worker around care planning, around any sort of difficulty that might come up practically with care, to help, we can help with that. We have medical alert system, medical alert wanderer safety program, which is a bracelet that you can put on, a person with dementia can have. We also have caregiver bracelets, so that this way, if anybody is found, they can be matched back with their loved ones fairly quickly. We also have a Connect to Culture program, which provides cultural programming for people with dementia and their caregivers. And we actually are doing that now with COVID. We do have some programs, some events, I believe, that are up and running. And again, for any information about like what's current around, you know, our Connect to Culture programs, you can feel free to call our helpline. Okay, for persons with dementia, we used to have beginnings at CaringKind. Unfortunately, due to coronavirus, that is no longer here. And we have meetings and events like these. If there are topics that you're interested in, you can feel free to call our helpline or email us at the helpline and let us know, you know, that there might be a topic that you're interested in. As I mentioned, I got this topic from just the calls that I've been getting. So we do listen and we do try to respond to needs that people are sharing. So I'm going to end my presentation with this before I go to questions and answers. This is a self-compassion meditation. This is actually Kristen Neff, who I mentioned, who is the psychologist who coined the term self-compassion. I really enjoyed this and I found it very helpful, and I think she brings home a lot of the points that I've mentioned. So I'm going to play this, and I'm interested to hear how everybody is going to respond to it. So let me just make sure that it is loud enough. Can everybody hear?
No, Adina, you got to share the volume.
How do I do that?
It should be on your screen, and it'll tell you to share the volume of the video.
Because nothing is telling me. All right, you know what? I know what I'm going to do, because I have it also on my internet, on my on the web. Let me see if I can do that.
All right.
All right, I'm just going to stop share for a moment. And hello. Okay. Let me see if I can do this now. Wait, where am I? Okay. Share screen, and I want this, and share, and let me see if this works now. It's not giving me, wait. It's not used.
The volume is really low.
Okay, let me see if I can get it.
Go ahead and close your eyes.
Still low?
That you are in a caregiving.
Let me see. Is there a way? Wait. Microphone.
Dina, when you click share screen, did you share the computer audio? Because sometimes, like just right before you share the screen, there's a box, and at the bottom left of that box, there's a check. Like you could check share computer audio.
Yeah.
That sometimes help.
Oh, yes, I'm so sorry. I see it here. Okay, let me do that again. All right. Yeah, you think you know Zoom until you keep playing with it. Okay, let me turn this on and let me know.
I'd like to lead you
Can you
through
hear
a
this?
practice
Yep.
called Compassion with Equanimity. And it's designed for caregivers to be used in actual caregiving contexts, although I'm going to lead it more like a meditation. So go ahead and close your eyes. And imagine that you are in a caregiving context. Maybe you're caring for a patient or an elderly parent. Right, imagining a real caregiving situation. Call it up in your mind's eye. Again, normally you would do this in real life, but for now we're going to imagine we're there. And first of all, allow yourself to get in touch with some of the stress and difficulty of being a caregiver. It's hard, right? We often feel overwhelmed or tired. Allow yourself to feel all your feelings, even if they're ones you think you shouldn't be having, like anger or irritation. Just letting everything arise. And so what I'd like to do is first I'm going to say some words of equanimity to remind us that although we may seem superhuman, we have our limitations. We are only human. But please just let these words drop into your awareness. Everyone is on their own life journey. I am not the cause of this person's suffering, nor is it completely within my power to make it go away, even though I wish I could. Moments like these are difficult to bear, and yet I will try to help if I can. Just letting those words settle into you. And starting to notice your breathing, particularly your in-breath. Noticing how the breath nourishes you, gives you the oxygen your body needs. And as you breathe in, breathing in compassion for yourself. Right? You might also imagine a white or a gold filling your body with each in-breath. But as you breathe in, breathing in care and concern for your own struggle and difficulty. Giving yourself what you need. And perhaps that's strength, courage, peace, or simply compassion. Breathe in for yourself. And then now, focusing on the person you're caring for, the person who's suffering in some way, right? Call the image of this person to mind, what they're going through. And start to focus on the out breath. And as you breathe out, imagine that you're breathing out compassion for the in difficulty. You might imagine that as you breathe out, you're filling their body with a golden healing light. You send your well wishes so that they have what they need. Peace, kindness. And then bringing both together so that as you breathe in for yourself. And as you breathe out for the other. So in for me and out for you. One for me and one for you. And if you like, you can adjust the ratio. So maybe your own stress, fatigue is really coming up for you. Feel free to breathe 4 for me and 1 for you. 10 for me and 1 for you. You know, if the suffering of the person you're caring for is really salient, feel free to breathe out more for the other. But just make sure you always include both yourself and your other in your breathing, in your circle of compassion. Remembering that the source is limited, a vast, boundless ocean, more than enough for you, caring for. And once more, remembering these words of wisdom. Everyone is on their own life journey. I am not the cause of this person's suffering, nor is it complete, even though I wish I could. Moments like these are difficult to bear, and yet I will try to help if I can. So that's practice it as a meditation. You can use the breath as a vehicle for your compassion in the actual caregiving setting you're working in, but always just remembering equanimity. We care so much. We want so much to help others, but we are human. And if we vulnerability with compassion, everyone benefits. Thank you.
Wow. So what was that like for everybody? Any thoughts? Everybody can just kind of take it in.
You know, it was very helpful because I don't get to particularly do my own self-care as much as I need to. So, you know, I think it's important to look for that self-care wherever you can find it, you know, wherever you are, you know, and it's hard to bridge the gap between working from home, where I've been doing for like the last few months, and then just starting to come back to taking the train, going to work, and, you know, like grounding yourself, I guess, if you will. And when you talked about anger, it's like all that stuff just kind of just goes away for a moment. This was very nice, and I'm gonna probably play it again over and over. Thank you for that.
I'll tell you what I loved about it was when she did the breathing, you know, taking in for yourself and then breathe out for the other person. And, you know, if you want to take more, you can take more. And, you know, as caregivers, when do you ever hear that you can take more than the person you're so at this point, if people have anything you want to add, if there's some mention that you want to discuss around anger, otherwise you will all get copies. I'm cutting in and out again.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm not on share screen. Okay. Let me see what I can do here.
I think you're okay.
I hear myself.
Yeah.
Okay, now.
Okay.
What I find is
I don't know if I did anything. Oh, just please, I can hear you. I don't know if you can hear me, but I.
Oh, what? Can you hear me? Yeah. What I find is my biggest.
I can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay. What I find is my biggest frustration is when I tell my husband that it's time for dinner, and he asked me when it'll be ready, and I said 10 minutes, just like you give the kids 10 minutes instead of saying now, because they're not going to get up now. So I give him 10 minutes, and then I go back into the family room, and he's still sitting in his chair. And I said, I give him his walker. I say, okay, come on, let's get up. And he goes, 1, 2, 3. And then he looks around and he starts talking about something else. And I'm plotzing. I mean, I just, you know, come on. And he just, he doesn't focus on what he has to do. And I just get angrier and angrier and angrier, you know, in myself, inside my body. And I try to deal with it. But out of all the things that I have to do to help him, and he's confined to a wheelchair. So out of all the things I do to help him, I feel that is the most frustrating, waiting for him to, you know, to change from one place to another, the transition places. That to me is the most difficult. And I don't know how to let go of it. It's just, it's hard.
It's hard, and especially because it's part of the illness, you know, and that's something that, like, you know, you can't really change that. It's more about, like, you know, I guess what might help is trying to figure out like what about it is really touching the nerve. Is it that you don't feel like you're getting enough help from him or from others? Is it seeing him, you know, in the situation that he's in? I mean, you know, is it the fact that this is even happening? By the way, to let me know if you can hear me.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, I think if you could try to figure out like what about it is making you so angry, it might be easier to try to figure out. I mean, I'm not saying you'd never be angry again, but to make it like go a little bit more down.
Right. Okay, I'll try that. Thank you.
I would like to jump in. Hi, everyone. I really like that video. You know, I've been practicing mindfulness and meditation for many years, and I'm kind of have to do it or I'll go mad. And that was a very helpful video. And well, first of all, I practice without fail. I make an effort to wake up every morning and do 10 minutes mindfulness practice. And it's really important because it slows things down enough that if you have an impulse coming from anger, you have an opportunity to be slowed down enough to see what you're doing and maybe not act on it so quickly. So it gives you the kind of a gap, but also that particular compassion practice, I'm also familiar with it. And I never knew about it so much where it was on yourself. It's always sending out compassion for everybody else. So that was very, very valuable. But I would like to recommend to everybody to listen to that in the morning before you do anything else and see what happens in your life. Because I know that for me, it's a must. It's like I have to have coffee in the morning and I have to do mindfulness for 10 minutes in the morning. And I wanted to just talk about ambiguous loss because I never heard that term before. And it's a fascinating term, but I think the difference with ambiguous loss between, say, the sailor who's lost at sea and you're waiting for him to come home, but you don't know if he will, or the soldier who's out there and you don't know if they're going to come back, is that you still have hope. You still have hope that they'll come back. And in this case, it's not quite the same because you're losing the person and they're still here. But at the same time, you don't have a hope they're going to get better. You've been taught and told it's not going to go backwards. And and for me personally, my anger is that sense of that there's this progress that's just going on and on where my mother, who's 95, is, you know, worse every day. And it's not her fault. And then I also get angry at my family or at life because my brother's in Boston and he's too busy with his family to come in and help. My daughter is in Portland, Oregon, and she's too far away with her life. My husband is stuck in Florida. And if he came here, he would have to quarantine for 2 weeks first anyway. So he wouldn't go, we wouldn't want him near her because she's so fragile. So it's like all on me. I'm the only one. And I had a brother who died a year ago of pancreatic cancer, and that's having an effect on my mom. And he would have been the one, and he lived in the neighborhood. He was always coming over. But he's gone. So it's once in a while I just get this thing to my family, like to my brother, my living brother, like, what makes your life so valid compared to my life? Is my work less important than your work? Is my family life more important than yours, that you can't just drop everything and come here and be here and help me? You know, why am I the one that has to sacrifice everything and give up my life basically for an indefinite amount of time? I have no idea how long. And so that's really where, you know, I have tools to work with the anger, but that's a lot for me. I'm not so angry at her because, yeah, it's frustrating when she forgets everything and we have to repeat everything over and over again. But I feel that I've slowed down enough using my meditation practice. But I get very angry at life and at my family for the situation that I feel stuck in right now, because it's caused me like livelihood, it's caused me my marriage, and it's, you know, it's just a situation.
Yeah. No, I hear, and there's a lot to be angry about. I don't know if you can necessarily fight that. I mean, I wouldn't suggest you have a lot to be angry about.
It's about, you know, the co-emergence of the COVID situation, along with my mother being unable to be left alone even for, you know, 20 minutes.
Yeah. And the fact that nobody's around to help, and it's on you. You know, that's really.
Can I jump in real quick too? I just wanted to say one more thing. You know, and I'm glad you brought this up. I'm Marilyn, by the way. Hi, everybody. You know, when you talk about like the anger, for me, what I've been wanting to say for a long time, I just didn't know how to come out and express it, was why was I so resentful? Why am I so resentful? And part of me is my mother is just, you know, going through the early onset, and, you know, there's the sundown, I think it's called. So, you know, she still has yet to have a proper diagnosis, but you see the little things that she does. And I feel like I get so annoyed. You know, I care for both my parents. They're in their, you know, early 80s. And it's difficult as an only child growing up with my parents. My father had a previous marriage, but, you know, it's been me. And it's always been, I was what we always call each other, the Three Musketeers. You know, we're always, you know, we're there for each other. The resentful part that I hate is I get angry because I guess like my mom is like my best friend over the years growing up. But I'm 43. My parents are in their early 80s. But I think the resent comes in that it's not her. And I know it's not her. You can't help but to get mad. I get mad. I get frustrated. My anger is ridiculous. And people wonder why I have so much patience. And it's hard. It's hard to keep it all in. Mm-hmm. And it's hard when you don't have people like this group here who you can actually vent to and say, damn, you know, like this is hard. This is, you know, watching is hard. But the resent that I feel is this thing is taking my mom away from me. So the resent I feel is that it's not her, but it's her. And I get so frustrated because this thing is taking over my mom and I'm losing that person who I love so much. And when somebody says, I understand what you're going through, really? That's another, you know, frustration, you know, family. I am my mother's only child, but my father's fifth, you know, he's already had a loss of a child, and, you know, but nothing compares to when you're going through it yourself. Mm-hmm. So I think this is the first time I've actually been able to say I'm feeling resentful about the disease. And then not so much my mom, but, you know, little by little, I'm losing her. There's days that are wonderful, and those are the days that I really appreciate when things are good. But when you know, there's bad days and good days. So, you know, I'm just glad that you guys are all here, you know, and I wish that us as caregivers, you know, just need to really focus on oneself, because like if you're not good for you, how can you be good for the next person? So I guess, you know, I've always had to look at it that way. So, you know, I hope that maybe in time in the future, you know, while we're all still here in the present, that, you know, while they're looking for cures for cancer, they're looking for cures for other things, hopefully something good will come out of all this, you know. And for me, fortunately, COVID hit me in a sense of blessing for me, not for anybody else, because I'm, you know, I'm sure the people that I can't speak for others, but like I've been able to stay home on purpose. Mm-hmm. Since I don't have aid to help their insurance, you know, they make too much in terms of Social Security for even getting an aid, and it's not enough, you know. But I was fortunate, I'm blessed that I can start going back to work little by little. But, you know, while I'm at work, I'm like, Alexa's very helpful. I can just jump right in and just, you know, I have the Alexa with the video that I could just be like, you guys are okay? You didn't break anything? You didn't do anything? You know, my father's the forgetful, but my mother's dementia is more serious. But my father is forgetful, but he just looks at me, he goes, your mom's just effed up. It's just, you know, and I look at my father and I laugh because he and I are going through it together, but not so much because he has his world too. So, you know, I'm just glad I had an opportunity to speak. Thank you so much. I didn't want to say too much, but she brought it out and I just had to speak up. Thank you so much.
Sure, I appreciate that. There were two things you mentioned that I think I should highlight that I didn't. One is you mentioned being angry at the disease, and I think that's a good thing. You know, it is the thing to be angry at. But also another way of dealing with anger constructively is like putting energy into a cause. And if it's your cause to you know, try to work to eradicating Alzheimer's, you know, maybe getting involved in organizations or fundraising or things like that, you know, to go towards a cure, you know, might be a way. There are other things, but just the idea of putting all of that anger into use, because that's energy, is another idea. And another thought I was thinking about was with your dad saying about your mom being effed up. You know, using humor. Humor is also a really good deflection. It also, you know, it releases endorphins in the body, which also makes you feel good. And it's also another way. I mean, it's kind of similar to mindfulness practices, but I don't know if it's particularly mindful, but it's a way of stepping back. So, you know, using humor as much as possible is also really important. Use humor instead of it, because then that becomes a defense. But if you're using it sort of as a way of dealing with it, without denying what's going on, it's really important. Okay, thank you for all your comments, guys. And I know somebody asked a question, a really good question. How do you deal with anger towards self as if it's your fault that this is happening? And that's really, that's certainly a hard one. That's also why I really loved what Kristen was so. I do think it's important to acknowledge to yourself and keep acknowledging this is not your fault. Nobody caused whoever you're caring for to get dementia. It's something, I mean, I don't even know if right now we can pinpoint a real reason why people have it right now, except maybe that there's a family history, but even then, you know, and I think trying to step away from or take a step back from feeling like you caused it. Certainly, you know, I hope you can hear me tell you that you didn't cause it and that you can accept what I'm saying. You know, but it's hard. And I think even if, you know, you don't feel you directly cause it, I think caregivers can feel very responsible for the person's well-being. You know, particularly, you know, there are, you know, I mean, we're talking about self-care and wellness, you know, there certainly are guidelines for wellness for people with dementia. You know, you want to make sure that they're as engaged as they can be and things like that. But at the same time, there might be barriers to having that happen, and that will make it harder for you in terms of your own self-care. Or maybe the person you're caring for doesn't want to do stuff. Maybe the person you're caring for doesn't want to switch to a Mediterranean diet. You know, I mean, there are all sorts of things, and it doesn't, you know, just because you're not getting that done it still doesn't mean that it's your fault. You know, it's not your fault. And you know, it's back to, I guess, going back when we think about with the self-compassion piece, about our common humanity, how we're all limited here, and we're all just trying to do the best that we can with what we're presented with. I think when it comes to Alzheimer's or any other sort of dementia, you know, you're talking about, I run the Understanding Dementia workshop, one of them anyway, at CaringKind once a month. And so I talk about this all the time, but what we're really talking about dementia, we're talking about a disease that is really killing the brain. So you're talking about parts of the brain that are no longer alive. So you're talking about the person doesn't have their full capacities, even physically. It's not just, you know, psychologically or cognitively, it's physically present in their bodies. You can't, you know, as a human being, there's nothing that you can do to sort of try to fit those holes. You know, you can be there to support and to do everything to the best of your ability, but you know, sometimes that is good enough. I don't know if that's a satisfying answer, but that is the answer. And I would say, you know, using that as an affirmation, you know, I am good enough. I am doing good enough. I am doing the best I can with the person who I'm caring for.
Hi, I'm Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi, I'm so happy that you're doing this tonight because I'm totally angry all the time. I take care of my 76-year-old sister who is She doesn't remember anything. She doesn't know to take a shower. She doesn't know to brush her teeth. And I've taken care of my father who was sick, my 99-year-old mother who just passed away.
Want to listen to it, Sherry?
And now I have my sister. And I have a very good support. I'm sorry. I have a very good support system. My sister, my daughters help me as much as they can, but they have their own families. My husband is here to help me. But I know I try to reason with her, and I can't reason with her. And I'm not a vicious person, but sometimes I feel like I want to smack her. So I have to step away. And now I'm at least I feel better that other people are in the same situation that I'm in. There's nothing she needs me. I have to take care of her. There's nothing, I have no choice in the matter. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Sure, no, I'm glad you found this helpful. And I think that's why I think this is also so important. I think it's so easy to fall into this trap of thinking that you're the only one feeling this way. And then you're in a whole Zoom with people who are feeling this way. And I promise you, this is just scratching the surface of people in this situation who feel this way. It's almost part and parcel of the caregiving program.
Thank you.
Hi, Adina. I'm not on video. I'm one of those people, but I wanted to speak up because I'm sort of in an acute situation with my mother. Of course, everybody here is in acute situations in different ways, but my mother has, we think, undiagnosed dementia, and she's in the hospital currently. We don't really know if it's dementia related, or they're trying to determine if she has some kind of infection, but I found her last week on the floor and she was delirious, and so she was brought to the hospital. And the other night, at the hospital, she was just she gets very agitated. I mean, that's her norm. And then on top, with this especially, and she was just carrying on that she's going home and nobody can tell her what to do and so on. And, she got very angry at me, and now we sort of kissed and made up, and I'm doing everything. Like so many other people on this call, I have other family, but they're not available. So it all falls to me. So I guess my question is, how do you control your anger? And I know you touched on this a little at the beginning, but when you're doing all you can, you're not in the wrong, but still the person says terrible things and kind of pushes your buttons, and you just can't keep letting it roll off of you. Thanks.
That's a really hard one. I think, and
somebody needs to go on mute.
Okay. It might also be harder because, it's sort of like this dementia diagnosis is up in the air and you don't know what's wrong.
Yeah.
But what I do think, coming from a dementia perspective, and even if it's not dementia, if there's anything that's sort of altering the brain, even if it is, say, a UTI, I do think it's important to realize that, it's not coming from your mom, it's coming from the disease. It's not always easy to remember that in the actual moment, but I think if you think about it, there's a term I like. I got it from a blogger. It's not mine. Called Alzheimer's world. If you think about your mom is in Alzheimer's world, and when you're with her, you have to go into Alzheimer's world, and it's not working with the same logic of our world. There might be a little more space for you to be able to emotionally step back from it. Mm-hmm. Realizing that, she's pushing your buttons, but this is because it's something going on in her brain. It's not because she's trying to hurt you, even though it feels that way. I think it's, that might be that certainly can help. I think that the bottom line is, I think whatever you can do to sort of create space, either physical space or emotional space between you and your mom in the interaction that makes you angry. So sometimes it might be, okay, I you know what, I got to go get a drink and I'm going to go step out of the room. You know, or sometimes it might be just being able to mentally say, okay, this is coming from Alzheimer's world. It's not coming from the real world. You know, but I would say first step is whatever you can do to create that space is useful.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah, hi. My name is Mandy. I'm sorry if I cut in, but like Rachel was saying, like the self-care, the meditation is really, I think is really beneficial. It's helped me a lot. I look after my grandmother and I'm a child care provider. So it's like I'm caring for the little ones, I'm caring for the big ones, and I'm like right in the middle. And it's been challenging for me. I don't have really much anger towards my grandmother or the dementia. I feel like, you know, it's a part of life. But my main issue is that I feel like I'm not taking care of myself. I've lost a lot of friends. My boyfriend and I, who we've been together for 10 years, we're like on the fritz. Trying to go to school, that's a struggle. You know, so that's what I'm angry about, like me not really taking care of myself. So I started doing meditation, and I found that helped. And I would like really ask everybody to just give it a shot, give it a try, because it really helps.
Yeah, thank you, and you know, good luck. I you know, sometimes even just doing that first step of meditation can sort of help you somehow figure out ways of integrating other parts of caring for yourself. You know, I find this with a lot of things, like just taking that first step, just doing that 2 minutes, you know, it can open up other ways of thinking and other avenues, and oh, maybe I forgot about this, that I had this resource I have, and you know, I hope that it can expand and help you to be able to care for yourself.
I guess my anger is based on the loss of our lives. We're fairly young. She just hit 63, and I'm speaking to my wife. And we used to travel. We used to do so many different things, and now it seems like we're cooped up in the house 24/7, and taking her outside is a challenge. You know, she had a doctor's appointment today, and she was adamant that she wasn't going to go. Adamant. It took me about half an hour to get her, you know, to that point. You know, so I guess that's where, you know, I come from. You know, last week was her 63rd birthday. It took me half a day to convince her that it was her birthday. So I guess I'm struggling. This has only been going on for 4 months, but she went from 0 through to 60 in like a month. So,
and there's plenty to be angry about with that, because your life has changed so drastically in such a short amount of time. I mean, I think I think everybody here probably has some degree of feeling that, you know, life has completely changed for them in unfair ways. With you, it sounds like the lead time was really, really short. I mean, I think, yeah, and that's really hard. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it was a month's time, 30 days. It was more or less, we knew she was having some problems and she was being tested, but the whole onset thing and the way it manifested itself with anger and violence on her part initially, you know, it was just, let's just say it was just crazy. You know, it was just crazy. The doctors say that it's not common, but it certainly does happen, that it can go from 0 to 60 in a short period of time.
Yeah, I think the the difficult thing with dementia is that, you know, when you see one person with dementia, you see one person with dementia. So, you know, you might have people who will have their experiences about what their family member went through, but it's not going to be the same as your experience necessarily. And what worked for one person with dementia is not necessarily going to work for another person with dementia. You know, and that I think is really tough. And it also sort of blindsides you because it's like, wait a minute, this is not what I'm used to. This is not what I've heard about, you know, what dementia is. And so that's even more disorienting.
Yeah, so father has dementia, but he is totally different than her dementia. His dementia, he's very docile. He listens to his wife. He doesn't, you know, it seems to be a constant battle for me right now. And maybe it's just an adjustment period. I hope it's just an adjustment period. But it's very, you're right. One person with dementia has one, you know, it's one person with dementia.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wondering if anybody else has anything else they want to say. Oh, sure. Sure. Hold on. I see. David, were you raising your hand?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, wait. Unmute. Sorry, I did that. Okay.
And can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
My wife, this February was diagnosed with, you know, Parkinson's after that scan that they gave. I think it's called a DAT scan or something like that. So it was confirmed, and we went to Columbia and had a second opinion and diagnosis. And yes, you know, Parkinson's was confirmed, and after some testing, she was diagnosed with Lewy body, you know, dementia. And so it'll be 2 years this February. And I'm accustomed to fixing things, you know, and I get a lot of satisfaction from that. A lot of frustration. And this is something I can't fix. So I'm really, you know, fighting with her. You know, we're rehabbing, we're doing all the things that, you know, they suggest you do to kind of produce some more dopamine. And I have a history of exercising and really getting intense. And I'm trying to get her to that level. And I'm having a hard time with it because I just think that I'm taking it so much more seriously than she is. And I really, when I can't reach her, I become angry and I stay angry. And I really don't want to be around her. And I'm hurting, and I'm going back over, you know, my notes when you first started this meeting about listening to my anger. What is it telling me? You know, the fear, the grief, being powerless, you know, acceptance over this stuff. Because it's really tearing me apart that I could get that angry. That I'm guilt-ridden and I feel so bad that, gee, how could I not want to be around somebody who needs me? You know, and I don't know what to do with that. You know, that's the hard part, because I know she needs me. And I certainly want to be there for her. So that's the level of anger and frustration and disconnect. I can't go on, you know, like that. Not when I know she does need me, and I'm praying, I'm doing all that stuff to kind of be more understanding. So, you know, we're recognizing, you know, what this is, and maybe I haven't come to terms with it. Maybe I really haven't spoken to her about how this is you know, what it means to me, let alone, you know, her, you know, who's been afflicted by this. But, you know, I don't want to be this. I don't want to be that angry. I don't want to be that disconnected from her. Mm-hmm. But yet it's so easy to do, you know, that I think I'm justified in it. And,
do you have to be?
And I bail on her. And go ahead.
Have to be with her all the time?
I'm lucky in the sense that, you know, we live in a 3-family house, and I've got my daughters who are here, and I'm not with her 24/7. Or certainly, I don't. My life has changed. I don't go too far, you know, at all. You know, if I go to the coffee store or shop or run to the gym, you know, I'm always back. I'm minutes away from her, but pretty much I'm always here for her, which is not always a good thing either, you know. So, because we get into it real easy. I mean, we could, you know, start a conflict. A lot of times I just feel like I'm swimming uphill, you know, and if this is my lot in life, and, you know, it certainly is hers, then I could do that. You know, I can roll with that. It's just that I wish I could, you know, reach her more to understand the importance of trying to retain what she's been taught. You know, I've had long conversations with doctors and her ability to comprehend and not comprehend, and, you know, the poor judgment, things like that. And I'm battling. I'm punching hard, you know, and I want her to punch as hard. And I don't want to give up, you know, and I don't want her to give up. And when she does, I get angry, you know.
Does she, are you talking about in terms of like physical therapy? Because I'm just thinking.
She's in physical.
She is, yeah. Because there are like some fun things that they have now with particularly with people with Parkinson's. They have like dance classes for people with Parkinson's. They have like boxing classes for people with, well, I don't know if the dance I know is online now. I don't know about the boxing, but they do have like engaging things for people with Parkinson's. It may be more difficult. Well, firstly, I know with the executive functioning, it's really with Lewy body especially, it can be really difficult to get them to do exercises, to remember, even just to remember to use assistive devices can be really challenging. So I don't know what it is that is the resistance, but if it's something like just finding some fun things, you can give us a call. We have I can get you those resources for like if she would be interested in doing a dance class, and you could go with her.
Oh yeah, I mean I'd love to do that, you know, and stuff.
But,
sure, yeah.
But I think it's also hard because, you know, you may have a lot of motivation, and she may not. And that also might be because of the dementia also, which is back to fighting this disease where you can really only do, you know, the most that you can do. But it also, I do think that if she's good, you know, and you know, you have your daughters around, you know, you probably, it does sound to me like it would be safe if you wanted to take a break and, like, you know, go further than the gym. You probably could, just to get a little bit of a reprieve, you know. And sometimes that's enough to help you keep going. You know, you take the break, and then you have, you know, what you need to go forward.
Yeah. Well, I thank you for, you know, what you guys are doing, and I'll be staying in touch. That's for sure. You know.
Now, Sandra, I saw that you were just you wanted to say something. Oh, I don't. Oh, now I hear you. Oh wait, no, I don't hear you. Hold on, I can't hear. I'm still having trouble. Can anybody hear you? Can anybody hear?
No, she's muffled, Adina.
I'm sorry?
She's muffled.
I don't hear any. I'm not hearing anything. I feel bad. I thought it was just me who's the muffled. Whoa, wait. I think there's something up with your mic. If you want, you can post in the chat. Yeah, it's really good. Hold on.
Adina, did you see the question from Fred Murphy?
Yeah, let me see. Hold on. Why does it take so long for a doctor to get a definite diagnosis when it is quite evident on the patient? That's a good question. Actually, the reason why it can take so long is because they're trying to get rid of, to rule out any other possible diagnosis that could potentially make these symptoms. So there are actually over 120 different causes of dementia. And so what they're basically doing is making sure that it's none of those other causes. Some of those causes can be reversible. So if they can reverse it, that they want to know that they can reverse it. So that's why it takes so long. Well, I guess, wait a minute. Let me just make sure I understand the question. Is it why it takes so long to get an appointment, or why it takes so long to get the actual diagnosis once you have the appointment? Because that's why it would take so long to get once you have the appointment. I do have people who have a lot of hard times getting the appointment. But the real answer is they're doing a differential diagnosis, and they're trying to get to rule out any other type of cause of dementia that can be reversed. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I hope you didn't hear my frustration. I hear from a lot of people, and they have a lot of trouble. So, so let me see. Yeah. I'm sorry about Sandra. If you want to ask a question in the chat, I'll be happy to answer it. Because I don't know what's going. I mean, I really feel for you, because I was in that same situation with the bed mic issue. But I don't know what's been happening with the mic.
Adina, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah, so I have people who, like I work for a caregiver services program, so I hear some of their stories, and sometimes it's difficult for me to respond. And so in this one particular case, the caregiver, I think, is experiencing what you categorize as volcanic anger, and that was just building up, and to a point that she just couldn't hold it anymore. And like, it was just very small thing. I think like she was asking the person to eat, and the person wasn't eating. And so like the caregiver just hit her mom. And it was just really, she felt really guilty afterwards. And she just felt so sad, and also so frustrated that she did that to her mom. And there is no way for her to, like make up for that, or like to apologize and be forgived. And so that has just been giving her a lot of like trouble. And I wonder if like you have kind of a better way to help her to manage that guilt that she's having.
That's an interesting question. And it does come up because it's like, you do have like times when you end up fighting, and the person who is I guess the caregiver in the dyad, may feel bad after, may want to make up, and the person with dementia doesn't even remember it. So it's like there's no making up with that. Is she in a support group?
Yeah, I'm trying to established one. Yeah, but not yet. This is also very hard.
Because that might be a good place to process it. Because they're really, or if she has somebody she can speak with. I mean, if she has, yeah, I mean, certainly if she isn't part of any spiritual tradition, if she can talk to a faith leader, that could be helpful. Even if she can talk to a friend and say, I really feel bad about it, and just have somebody listen and kind of say, well, I'm sure your mom would forgive you. Or maybe she could talk to you about it. You know, that to sort of get that from somewhere, it can't come from her mom, but just that acknowledgement that, you know, something did happen and she wants to repair it. I think that is probably that's probably the only way to really move forward with it.
Yeah, and it's not like that. This is just like one time, and like, because she's never graduating from her duty. Like, she's like constantly, so you need to take care of her, and the frustration never ends. And it's
yeah, I'm sorry. I would also say, like, if somebody gets to that point, that means that there needs to be some more help there. It can't just be on that person, because they've reached their tipping point, and it's really not safe for anybody at that point for it to be at that level of care. You know, it's really like time for, you know, getting an aid in, maybe getting a break for a few hours a day, or I mean, I don't know if you're involved with a caregiver program, if there's respite or something. I was in Heights and Hills, so I'm familiar with the caregiver programs. You know, just something. She can't do it at the intensity that she's doing it. It's taking too much out of her. And it doesn't mean she's graduating. It doesn't mean she's gone. It doesn't mean she's, you know, bailing out. But it means she has to take care of herself, because right now, if you think about that, I mean, I'm going to just go with that breathing exercise. You know, right now she's getting all of her breath out to her mother and taking really very little in. And you can't keep going that way. So I think as her social worker, that's probably, you know, where we really want to encourage her to get the help that she can get. And also to talk it out with whoever she can talk it out with, and to try to get some recognition of you know, of a repair somewhere. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then I just want to say real quick.
Sure.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was going to just read from the chat, and then I guess you'll be the last one. I know Sandra had a comment, and okay, I didn't have a question, but a comment that when a person with dementia has poor judgment, it can cause serious problems. My husband fell and I called an ambulance, but he refused to go to the hospital. I'm an RN. Now he may have to go for x-rays from an ER when he could have already had them done at the hospital. Now he'll have to go to the ER. It's incredibly frustrating. And the poor judgment, it's maddening. And I think, I don't know if this is not going to erase anybody's anger, but I think the real question becomes, how much control do you have? And unfortunately, you know, sometimes it's just going to be the person is going to have to be left to their own judgment. And the question for you is really going to be more about, well, how am I going to respond to this? Like, how much am I going to go with the bad judgment, or how much am I not? And so if it's a spouse, I can understand how that's a hard one, but it's something to ask yourself, like, how much how much, I guess, do you want to interfere? I mean, you know, with his bad judgment, or if he's not going to listen, you know, trying to just, I guess, be mindful of how much control you have and using what you do have control over, but really sometimes there is not a lot of control, and maybe, you know, looking into other alternatives, into who can take him to the hospital if not you, or things like that might be the way to go with that one. But it's hard. I mean, you know, there are, the poor judgment, I think, can really be one of the worst aspects of this disease, and as a caregiver, having to deal with the fallout of that is really, I can't think of a good adjective, so I'm going to say difficult, but I mean something much greater than that. And I have to give my hat, before we leave, I do have to give my hats off to everyone. I mean, just the fact that you're here and the fact that you're here both for the person who you're caring for and you're here listening to how you can take care of yourself. I mean, you guys deserve so much credit for what you're doing. And you don't hear that really a lot from a lot of people, and you should, because, you know, I'm sure the people who you're taking care of can't articulate it, but I can. And I'm sure that they are so grateful for everything that you're doing, even if they can't express it or even, you know, be conscious of it right now. I can tell you from the work that I'm doing and from everything that I'm seeing, what you're doing is amazing and incredible. And the people who you're caring for are really lucky to have you. Yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you for allowing this platform. And, you know, thank you for validating everybody's feelings. You know, it really is nice to hear everybody and not feel alone. For the first time in a long time, I don't feel alone anymore. And I think that's all your ears is what's really helped me just now. And it's been a long time. It's been a very long time since I've never done therapy. This is the first for everything. And if I hadn't been a Channel 7 fan and had I not seen Bill Ritter giving the presentation on CaringKind, I would have not known about you guys. So I am very, very thankful, very grateful. And, you know, when going back to the presentation you gave earlier about the, you know, looking for a safer thing to look to, I guess that's like the displacement, you know, displacing on something safe that, you know, is not going to attack you back, like the cat or the dog. You know, like I often have displaced on my boyfriend or, you know, my best friend, not maybe more my boyfriend, less my best friend, but it's just a way of how people handle you as a whole. And I thank God that I do have a good support group, but it's not the same as this. So I just want to thank you all for your ears. And, you know, and Adina, I want to thank you because, you know, you're wonderful. Thank you so much. And I can't wait for more, you know, presentations like this and just see more ears. You know, I work with the deaf community, so ears for me is a big significance. And, you know, I take it all in, you know, and I just thank you so much. Everyone that's going through something. Thank you too.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for coming, and have a good night.